Well, I'm a clinical psychologist and a professor, and I'm doing that on a broader scale now, I suppose. But it's an extension of what I've done since 1987, really. I mean, I taught the same things I'm teaching, although I've expanded them all throughout my academic career, and my classes were very popular, and not popular exactly. I mean, I got tangled up in a political controversy in Canada. I mean, tangled up. I put my foot in it to some degree because I wasn't very happy with what I regarded as government overreach in relationship to who is in possession of my tongue. And I decided a long time ago I was going to say what I thought, and sort of independent of the outcome. You know, often people craft their speech. You know, I could have come here on your show, for example. I spent half an hour thinking, well, what do I want out of this show? But I don't think like that. At the moment, sometimes I'm taking questions from the audience, and so I just do a Q&A, but I don't look at the questions before I go on stage. And I ask my wife, who asked me the questions, not to show them to me. And then if I prepare a lecture, I usually have a question in mind, often that relates to one of the topics in my books, but sometimes something I'm thinking about, and then I use the lecture as an opportunity to explore that question and answer it while I'm watching the audience to see if my words are landing. And so it's an opportunity to think on my feet. And I think part of the reason the lectures are well attended is because it's a high wire act in some sense. Because I never know when I go on stage whether I'm going to bring the lecture to something like a punchline, to something like a conclusion. And I have no idea, because I'll have a variety of ideas up in the air. But, you know, there's an idea that the truth will set you free, right? And that's a very strange idea, because you could imagine that I could come here and I could decide there are things I want to do to promote my books, let's say, and I could tilt our conversation towards that. Or I could just say, well, I'm going to pay attention to what's going on here, and I'm going to see what happens, and I'm going to say what I think, and then I'm going to assume that whatever the outcome is the right outcome because it was based on something approximating the truth. I hope to encourage people. Other than that, I want to see what happens. You know, I want to say what I believe to be true as clearly and carefully as I possibly can, and I want to see what happens as a consequence. And what people don't understand about that in some sense is that the purpose of your life is not going to be happiness. Sometimes it is, sometimes that will come, but there will be difficult periods in your life and happiness won't suffice then. But what you can have in your life is an adventure. You can have an adventure. And the truth is the best adventure. There's no doubt about that. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is, you don't know what's going to happen if you say what you think. Now, I don't mean incautiously, and I don't mean provocatively or any more than necessary. You don't know what's going to happen. So that's very adventurous. But also, if it's you and your voice, then it's your adventure. And if it isn't, like if you're crafting your speech or manipulating in any way, or parroting or abiding by the dictates of the crowd, then I don't know whose adventure you're having, but it's not yours. When people say that there are some experiences that are in some ways purely subjective, and they're also valid in their subjectivity. So for example, if you're sitting there and you say, I'm in pain, and it's assuming I believe you're not manipulating me, I don't have access to that pain, but it's reasonable for me to assume that that's a genuine experience on your part and act accordingly. And so there is a realm where experience is valid that's subjective, but that doesn't mean that everything that happens to you subjectively is now to be regarded by fiat as the truth I have to abide by. It's also your responsibility. It's not just your right. And it's also one of the things people don't understand is that ability of the other person to oppose or rein in or satirize or dance with or joke or play with, all of those things, they're also what keeps you together and sane, because we all have a tendency to drift in our weakest place, let's say. And so some people become alcoholic, and some people will become narcissistic, and so on. We all have our temptations. And one of the ways we buttress ourselves against that is by having other people say, no, you're not funny, there you're boring, there you need to be reined in. And if you deprive yourself of that, that's what happens to hyper celebrities and dictators. They deprive themselves of that social regulation because they forbid it, and then they're in hell. And sometimes they drag everyone along with them too. So